Hello, astrologer Brian Coulter here for your horoscope report for the upcoming Aries full moon. Happens October 13th, 2:06 p.m. Pacific time. And this one is heated. A lot going on here. A couple weeks ago, when we had our new moon in Libra, it really set the tone for October. And that tone is a nice balance between Libra energies and Scorpio energies. Right now, we have Venus and Mercury in the sign of Scorpio, and we have the Sun and Mars in the sign of Libra. So for those of us who are sensitive to these planets, where they are in the sky right now, we'll be feeling it quite strongly, and it's going to be a relationship intensive. Our interpersonal surfboards are trying to keep a balance between Libra and Scorpio energies right now. Now, Libra waters tend to be a bit calmer, sometimes too passively so. Meanwhile, stormier scorpionic waters create chop from the turbulent undertow of our psyches. Also, Venus, the Sun, and Mars are hosting a barrage of squares to Saturn and Pluto right now. And on top of that, the full moon in Aries itself is in an exact square to Saturn and a loose square to Pluto. So I suspect there'll be some tumultuous energy in some of our relationships, especially if your own personal birth chart is getting stimulated by especially Saturn and Pluto right now. And then you're more likely to manifest the more shadowy dynamics that I'm about to describe with Libra and Scorpio. But there is a high end, a high potential, so bear with me. Now, the negative side of Libra tends to be passive-aggressive behavior. And this stems from the core instinct of Libra to want to maintain and support the bridge of rapport with other people. So sometimes there can be some too much self-sacrifice in our interpersonal relationships. Now, self-sacrifice isn't necessarily a bad thing, unless, of course, we're keeping score. The shadow side of Scorpio is moodiness and brooding, and in extreme cases, explosive emotional volatility. But this only occurs when we're obsessive about our own hurt places. If we get triggered by a person or an event, whatever, and then we replay the event in our mind and give it negative thoughts, it only grows stronger because of the superpower of our laser-sharp focus of our consciousness upon it. And then it only strengthens the subconscious association with that hurt place in us and imbues it with an insane magic until there eventually reaches a point where it explodes into manifestation and causes a great drama. Libra and Scorpio energies can play off of each other too. If we're overly passive-aggressive in our relationships, that passive-aggressive behavior can turn to resentment. And if that resentment is allowed to fester long enough, it creates an edginess in our psyche. Also, resentment tends to kill passion. So, without passion and without a fully expressed self, this can spiral into the moodiness, where we're less actively present and more reactive to external stimulus, and our buttons become more easily pressed. Now, this doesn't sound that much fun, needless to say, but there is higher ground. I just wanted to lay out the negative potentials first because of these squares to Saturn and Pluto. Also, it's just helpful information to help us to, sidestep some potential psychodrama in our lives. The good news is Libra and Scorpio are next to each other in the zodiac, and they can find a balance point with some slight adjustments. Libra is known as the scales in astrology, the platform balance, ounce of gold, ounce of lead coming into equilibrium with each other. And that's the primary instinctual drive for Libra, is to maintain that balance in relationships. And again, maintain that bridge of rapport, sometimes to its own detriment. But the goal or the desire inwardly is for love and intimacy. Albeit sometimes conditional love, it's still love, and that's nothing to scoff at. The scoffing can happen when it's not coupled with some realness and some honesty, which can be a potential blind spot for the darker manifestations of Libra. Enter Scorpio. Healthy Scorpio can provide a truth serum for the unspoken undercurrents of the muted self. Scorpio is sensitive to the underlying psychological motivations of human behavior, and with a strong dose of compassion for the human condition, Scorpio can provide some pretty sensitive insights into the Libran, passive charm masking subconscious agendas, okay, and then deepen the bridge of rapport that way through the psychological vein. And Libra is not so accustomed to bolstering the bridge of rapport in that way, but these are how these energies can coalesce on common ground. So far, I'm painting Scorpio to be the hero in this story. But again, if Scorpio spirals out of control with obsession and desire, this can lead into some pretty explosive territory. In the most extreme cases, we have, destructive toddler warfare. Enter high-end Libra with its disarming sweetness. That same desire for maintaining the rapport can be infused into some pretty incredible counseling abilities and disarm the nuclear warheads of Scorpio's tantrums. But the trick is, if Libra can stand strong in her truth and not wither into passivity in the face of a triggered Scorpio coupled with its hypnotic gaze, then Libra can eloquently diffuse the situation and maintain rapport through a peace treaty with chaos. Obviously, these energies are very different, but they can work well together as long as neither of them are dipping into the darker bag of tricks. As always, we're kind of on this teeter-totter between light and dark, love and fear, and it's the decisions we make both inwardly and outwardly, which dictate which end of the polarity we tilt towards. So it's helpful to play with these archetypes in our mind so that we can more gracefully dance through the energy that's filtering through human consciousness right now. All that being said, let's turn our attention to the Aries full moon. This provides a strong dose of passion to the trend I've already laid out, because Aries is the warrior in astrology. And this is a fiery and expressive moon sign, because Aries likes to assert itself, sometimes forcefully. And then we add to that this is a full moon, and everybody's emotions are going to be a little bit touchier. Not only that, but the full moon is square the Saturn and Pluto, as I said. So emotional volatility is a potential here. We're also seeing suffering all over the world, many uprisings in a lot of countries. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see the pot boil over during this full moon. Saturn and Pluto, I've been talking a lot about them pretty much in every video because they're the major feature of this unfolding year. It's basically, on a global level, the crumbling of old, outdated systems. Right now, we have a stark juxtaposition between the haves and the have-nots, and this is hitting its highest point of tension. Saturn and Pluto is a pressure cooker energy, and then we combine to that the full moon in Aries the warrior in a square to Saturn and Pluto. We add a strong lunar emotional spike to an already heated friction. And on a more personal level, those of us who are getting stimulated heavily by these planets when they're hitting our birth chart, our inner gremlins are more likely to come out to play. And I think that's actually a useful way of thinking about it. It's like when we get triggered, think of it almost like getting possessed in a way by this little inner demon, this little inner gremlin that we've been feeding over our lifetime with our attention, basically. The trigger comes, the emotional trigger comes, we get obsessive about it, we feed the emotion, the gremlin gets stronger. It basically becomes an entity, not a being, but it's a living emotional form, a living thought form. And with our consciousness, we're growing it over the lifetime. And these are how these triggers become so strong and a part of our subconscious mind. So it's helpful, for me at least, when I get triggered in a big way, like we all do, think of it as a little monster inside of you. And that monster wants one thing, and that's to be fed. And it can be fed by your negative thoughts. Negative thoughts feed negative emotions and vice versa. And same goes for positive thoughts. Positive thinking, kind of a self-help thing, but there's some truth to it. You're feeding the positivity inside of yourself. So when I get triggered, this sounds a little hippie, but I just take a time out. I sit with my inner gremlin. I don't feed it what it wants, and I just sit with it with love and compassion, and within 5 or 10 minutes, it fades. And that's how we can use the superpower of our consciousness and our awareness to consciously choose not to feed our inner gremlins. And over time, the triggers will fade and they'll no longer be a part of your subconscious programming. This is how we heal. Although this may be difficult to deal with sometimes, the good news is the high evolutionary path is the healing of old emotional wounds. And in turn, interpersonal mending and a deepening of the bonds with our loved ones. This is a blessing in disguise. As these uncomfortable energies creates an edginess in our psyches, and then the old pre-existing hurts from our past rise to the surface, the ultimate goal really is to purge. It's like when our bodies push a splinter out of our skin. Pluto is wanting to transform those wounded places in us, and in turn, Saturn maturation occurs and deepens our relationships. If we sprinkle in a little compassion and in the recognition that everybody's feeling this to a certain extent, folks are likely to be, a bit touchier. That and, a stubborn fixation on healing, this is how we can transmute pain into love and light. And the great prize is unlocking the shackles of the pain of our past and deepening the connection with our cherished ones. This is the evolutionary aim, with the goal always being to expand our consciousness.